Hi, in this lesson we're learning about hexadecimal color codes for online instructors and coaches. So that way you can know all about choosing your colors for your website, your courses, your community, your resources. Hi, I'm Angel from RT Course Experts, and we help creative online course teachers with their tech. In this lesson, we're learning all about hex color codes for instructors and coaches. So we're going to go over what is it, what is a hex, what is a color code, why do you need to use it, or where is it being used? Then we're going to go into a how-to guide where I'm going to explain and give you the tutorial about what hex color codes are and how to create them. Then we're going to go into an example where I'll go over a bunch of different colors, and finally we'll summarize our top tips. First of all, what is a hex color code? Well, it's a set of red, green, blue values used to represent almost any color on computer programs. Anybody that has a web page or a course or community, they have chosen their colors. They have their main colors. Every single color is defined by a red, green, blue value. That's what we're going to go into. We're going to deep dive into explaining it in simple English. Even if you're not a designer, you might be a creative coach, but maybe you teach piano, maybe you teach sewing or dance or music. You don't know RGB values, so we're going to get into that so that you can understand the basics as you work with designers to help your creative online business. Now, why use hex color codes? Well, hex color codes are used to specify exact colors on screens, images, PDFs, on all sorts of stuff. So when you have a screen, you might say, hey, the background is this certain color of beige, and I have this blue thing, and then I have this red area, and orange is our primary brand color. You're going to have all these different, colors, and you might even have variations of it. You might have your main orange, and you might have kind of a darker orange or a lighter orange that's your accent color. For every single one of those colors, you're going to want to make sure that you have an RGB code. That way you can work with designers. You don't want to say that. You want to be able to be very precise, say, hey, here's my website colors. When we're making a resource document, a PDF that's a downloadable, I want to make sure that the same oranges that are used on my website are used on my PDF. The way you communicate that is you provide a document and it has your RGB values, your main RGB values, your secondary, etc. Even other colors like supporting grays, the type of black font that you want to use. There's very specific values for what kind of white, what kind of gray, what kind of black. So all of those things are specified in RGB values. Let's get into a how-to guide just so that you can learn the basics of what RGB colors are. So first of all, RGB colors combine red, green, and blue. They're additive. If you have a white piece of paper, you're adding red, green, and blue to every pixel, let's just say, and that's going to create the colors. And every component value, so the components are red, green, and blue. So each of those values have a number from 0 to 255. And this is because underneath they're computer bytes. And bytes are 8 bits. They're numbers from 0 to 255. So every red could be 0 to 255. 255 would be the most red. 0 would be no red at all. If you were creating the color green, you wouldn't have any red at all. So red would be 0 and green would be 255. It would be a full on value. So that's it. So there's RGB. They have different colors. Every component has a magic number from 0 to 255. And in addition to that, computers often use hexadecimal. Our normal number system is base 10, 10 fingers, 0 to 9. We just keep going from there. So hexadecimal just works better underneath for the computer operating systems and the CPUs. And basically it goes from 0 to F. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then instead of 10, it's A, B, C, D, E, F. So that gets you the full 16. And you loop around. So then it's 10, 11, 12, 13, all the way up to 19. But instead of 20, it's 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, 1F. Okay, don't get lost in all that. Just know that there's this other number system out there. And at the end of the day, each of the components, red, green, and blue, are going to have a value from 0 to the most. And the most is either 255 or FF. And don't worry, most of the computer programs, your team will be able to understand that, and you'll be able to see that each component has a different amount of intensity. And that's what we're going to talk about. Just to let you know, there's this other system, and it's hex for short, and it basically goes from 0 to F. Okay? As an example, let's go over red. There's 3 numbers for every color, red, green, and blue. So the first number is red. To create the color red, you're really just going to max out that first value. So it's 255 or FF if you're in hex. That first one is going to be all red, and then you don't need any green and you don't need any blues. Those are zeros. So you'll see that red is represented as all red. And then if you're in Photoshop or Canva or some sort of web design program, you're going to see CSS, which is a cascading style sheets. That's how you find styles across your website. You'll see if there's a red there, it'll be FF0000 because that basically means red. By the way, in some of those programs, you can literally just type red. There's a hex color code for red, and it has these 3 parts, red, green, and blue. And there's these values, how much of red, how much of green, how much of blue. Now, sometimes, instead of writing a very detailed hexadecimal value with 2 digits, 2 digits, 2 digits, you might have a shortcode option. If you're just going to type red, you could just type F00. Basically, instead of typing the 6 characters, you do 3 characters, and it's one digit for red, 1 digit for green, 1 digit for blue. Now, from a design point of view, you may not like that because you can't get that exact fidelity that you want, that exact shade of burgundy or cyan or fuchsia that you love. We prefer to use the 6 digits so that you can be very precise about your colors. And remember, not everybody's looking at your colors on the same kind of device. Not everybody might have a high-end display. Maybe they're looking at it on their mobile phone or a tablet or in different lighting. Or maybe that image or that color or that web page is using JPEG, which is a lossy compression. It might not look as exactly as you designed it because it got reduced to be a smaller file and so that your web pages can load faster. There might be some color variations there. Okay? Let's talk about combining colors. There's these 3 parts, red, green, and blue. We talked about red, that's like 100% red, and then green and blue are 00. Let's just say you want to create yellow. You create yellow by combining red and green. To create like maximum yellow, you provide maximum red and maximum green. You don't add any blue at all, so blue 0. Let's just talk about the 3 values. So red is 255, green is 255, and blue is 0. And in hex, that would be FFFF0. When you write it all out as a hex color code, remember, it's from left to right, red, green, blue, so it's hashtag FFFF00. And that's how yellow appears on the screen. One last curveball. Just want to plant the seed for the future. There is an option to have transparency. I know, I don't want to blow your mind. You can add transparency, and that's using a term called alpha or alpha blending. It's this optional value that lets you decide how transparent is this color so that you could see stuff behind it. If you wanted to use an alpha code, they are often written by adding the alpha value at the end of the R, G, and B. So you provide the alpha value. That really specifies how transparent this pixel is relative to things that are behind it. okay? Again, I didn't want to blow your mind. I just want to let you, there's this transparency option. You know the basics. It's basically RGB. Usually you'll see 2 digits for red, green, and blue, okay? Every once in a while, if you see 8, maybe that's alpha. That might be some cool trick that your designer or your video editor is doing, maybe an animator is doing to do some cool tricks where you could see behind a certain thing. Now let's check out an example. I'm going to go over a bunch of different hex color codes and just explain. Remember, some people are watching this on video or podcast or reading the blog. I'm just going to explain this in different ways so that you can best digest this. As an example, if you wanted pure full red, so FF0000, so the FF is all red. That's every bit, every little bit of red is on. And then there's no green and there's no blue. So that's how you create red. Now, if you wanted some red, you might choose another number for the first hexadecimal byte. You might choose like half of it, which is 80 in hex. And that's about 128. Remember, 0 to 255 is kind of a full byte. 80 is about half. So that's some red. It might look like dark red, because remember, as you go to 0, 0, that's black. There's no color there. And as you go all the way max on and you turn every red, green, blue on, that's going to be white. So as you go lower in values, you're going to get darker shades. So if that first byte of red is a lower value, you're going to get less red. So you'll end up with burgundy. The same thing with green. So if you were creating green, the first value would be 0. The second one's going to be FF, and the last one is going to be 0 because you need all green. You'll end up with 00 FF 00, and that's full green. Now, if you wanted some green, then you would take the middle value and you would reduce it, and then you get a green that's not as bright because it's darker. It's less green, and there's no red and blue. Those are not even available. Those aren't included there, so there's nothing to add there. You're just going to get a lesser green if that middle value goes down. And the same thing with blue. In the case of blue, if you want full blue, the red is going to be 0, the green is going to be 0, and the blue is going to be all in. And then if you wanted less blue, that last value would be a smaller number. You could combine values, right? So let's just talk about taking red and green, the first 2 bytes. If you put a lot of red and a little bit of green, you'll end up with an orange. Or if you take a lot of red and a lot and full on green, then you'll end up with yellow. And you can even combine all 3, right? You can have different values. This is what happens automatically. You're aware of this as you were using these programs like Keynote or Canva or Photoshop, Illustrator, etc., or you're receiving assets from a marketing team or branding. They might just be creating these colors for you. If you look carefully, you'll notice that there's 3 values, red, green, and blue, for every shade, whether it's your primary or secondary, whether it's the darker version of your brand colors or the lighter version. You'll see that there's a red, green, blue for every single one of your colors. Let's go over black and white. These are some foundational colors just so that we're connecting the dots. If you wanted to show red, green, blue, remember they're additive. They take black and they add color and they eventually fill up. If you want to show the black color, you're actually not adding red, not adding green, and not adding blue. It's off. It's like the light on your TV is off. It's that white piece of paper. There is no extra color added. That's how you create black. So black is literally 000000. That is the color black. Let's just say you go 10, 10, 10. That's less black, almost like dark, dark gray. If you turn everything on, full red, full green, full blue, then you're going to end up with white. That means like everything is on. You've added all maximum brightness on every dimension, on every component, and so you're going to end up with white. So typically white is FF, FF, FF. Every component is 100%, and that's how you end up with white. And if you have like 80%, you might end up with light gray. So let's go over that. If you had a dark gray, it wouldn't be 000 because that's pure black, but you'd add a little bit to that. So as an example, 444444 goes ahead and adds a little bit of color. Since they're all equal, it's gray. No one color component is standing out. So it's a dark gray. And the same thing, if you were to go from white and go down a little, if you did somewhere in the middle, you'd get medium gray, as long as red, green, and blue are all the same value. Finally, I just want to address that advanced topic of alpha. This is where you have transparency. So if you took a blue color, and let's just say it's a custom blue, so it's got a red, green, blue, but it's heavily blue, and you wanted to see 100%, by default, it's not transparent. It's opaque. You're going to see the whole blue. You're not going to see anything behind it. But if you turned on alpha, let's just say 50%, so you have the RGB colors for that bluish color, and that alpha is set to like 50%. That means you're going to see 50% through. So it does change the color a little. You're letting the colors behind this go through, so it's being blended. So if you do 50% alpha, you take the blue, you could see through it, slightly lighter or slightly darker, depending on what's behind it. It gets combined, but that's how you do alpha. And so you might need alpha for, let's just say you're doing a tutorial video and you have an overlay and it's a little transparent. The overlay is using your branding colors, but it's a little transparent. And so that might be a smaller, that might be 80% opaque, or you're just letting a little bit show through of what's behind it. So anyways, so this is how you create red, green, blue, and these are hex color codes. You're going to see them everywhere. You may have already seen them, but you didn't really understand what they are. You're going to see these 6-digit values, and they're 3 bytes. 1 red, 1 green, 1 blue. That's the bottom line. You'll know what they are, and you could see them. And then when you get like 2 shades of red, you could see the RGB hex color codes, and you can see they're slightly different. One's your main red and accent red, or your secondary. If you want to level up, consider creating a brand guide for your company. It should have all your main colors. It should have names of colors as well as their RGB values. And you're going to even see shades. You might have your primary color, your secondary color, your main color 20% brighter, because sometimes you need that. That's what I recommend you do. You create a brand guide and have your 4, 5, 8 colors. You're probably going to have 3 to 4 main colors, and then you'll have a couple of other RGB values that are your secondary supporting colors, your variations, or even your blacks, whites, and grays. You might not just use those pure values, that perfect middle gray, that all black or all white. You might use a subtle variation of it. So get that written up as well. This way, your colors will be consistent across all your properties, your websites, courses, communities, resources, videos, social media, etc. You'll all have the same standard look and people will come to know your brand. So let's summarize. Here are the top things you need to know. Hex color codes. Hex because it's hexadecimal. Color codes. You could represent any color with an RGB value. And these are 3 values. When they're shown as hex codes, it's 6 digits. It's two numbers for the red, 2 numbers for the green, 2 numbers for the blue. You can combine and create almost any color that you need for your business. You can work with designers. You could do some stuff on yourself, and you'll know what you're talking about. And so now you're a lot smarter on hex color codes, whether you're doing it yourself or just working with So now you're a lot smarter on hex color codes. To learn more, check out the info and links in the notes. If you're loving this stuff, subscribe to keep leveling up your creative business. And if you need any tech help with your courses, community, or teacher website, visit www.rtcourseexperts.com. Thanks for hanging out. Let's stay in touch.